Greetings, everyone. Welcome to my studio, where it's always all about art, history, and culture. My name is ARTbyAKPOMIEMIE Erijaro. If this is your first time, you're most welcome. If you're returning, even better. Fantastic to have you here today. Today, I'm going to talk about a piece of work I did a while back, 2023. Yes, 2023, I did this work. And it was a work that gave me great joy to do. Well, I would say great joy. It was quite a mixture of joy and sadness. I will explain a bit more later. A bit of joy and sadness, but I'm a kind of a person that I like to see the glass as half full and not half empty. So with that kind of mindset, I try to bring lots of happiness. So that's why I was able to present these girls as these are teenage girls. They just laughing. They seem to be having a great time. And there's a bit more behind the smiles, which I will elaborate on as we go along. I did this work in Acrylics. It measures 137 by 137 centimeters, quite sizable as you can see, and I just let go of quite, it's very vibrant, full of positive energy, I believe, and it's a good time really. You see these teenage girls, they're just having the time of their life. They're so excited. What do young teenage girls giggle about? Only God knows, but they seem to be having a good time. That's what I try to capture in this piece. It takes me back to my years back when I was about that age. I attended a boarding school and boarding school for boys, and it was a time in my life when I look back now. Those has to be some of the happiest days of my life actually. When it was a carefree life was carefree, life was the innocence of childhood and things like that. As a matter of fact, some of the friends I made back then are some of my closest friends even to today. So it's a great time in anyone's life growing up where you carefree, you happy, nothing really bothers your mind. And it's also an image like this is a kind of image that will gladden the heart of any parent. I think it's universal really, where any parent greatest joy is to see your children laughing, see your children happy. So that's what I try to create in this image. That that's just one moment in time where the innocence of childhood is not being troubled and is being enjoyed by these young girls. I said that I did this painting a while ago, but even when I did my exhibition a few some time back, I it was in the part of the exhibition. It attracted lots of comments from the viewers, but I didn't want to dive into it. I just say, oh, just a group of young girls having a good time, really, just in the same picture. But the truth behind it is that kind of this painting was inspired by a very very sad, sad event that happened in my country. But even though it was a sad event, one of those I view life more like kind of my glass is always half full, it's never half empty. So when I view like that way, I try to go for no matter how bad things are, it could be worse, or let's look for the positive in it. That's what I try to capture in this image, the positive that I can bring out, however painful. It is a very painful subject, but however painful it is, it was, I say is because it's still painful even till now. It's a problem that has not yet been resolved. So I cannot just bury it in the past tense. It is still ongoing and still troubling after many years. After many years. We're going back now to 2014. By the way, this work, I call this work the Chibok girls. Some of you might have heard about the Chibok girls, but if you've not, allow me to introduce these Chibok girls to you. This event goes back, like I said, over 11 years now. Actually, on the 14th of April 2014, these school girls of Chibok Girls School, it was a boarding school, having a regular day at school, beautiful sunny day when a group of terrorists, they call themselves Islamic terrorists, Boko Haram, whatever, and then they invaded this school in this quiet, calm village and abducted 276 girls. It was terrible. 276 girls. And they get out these girls into the forest. There's a notorious forest in Nigeria, in northern Nigeria. This is in Borno State. So there's a forest called the Sambizi forest where they took these girls to. That's why I say it's very, very, I mean, it shocked the country. It was a very, very sad day, very sad event that really troubled everybody, you know. And these girls, kudos to some of them, as they were taking them into this forest, some of them had the presence of mind and braveness enough to jump off moving trucks or jumping, run into the bush and make their escape. Sadly, however, even till today, 82 of them are still in captivity. That's why I say I cannot bury them in the past, the present. And of these 82, goodness knows how many of them are even still alive. We don't know. But one thing we do know for sure is that over the years since they were captured, some of these girls, when they escape, they tell heartbreaking stories of how they been raped. Many of these girls were forced to marry these terrorists, and those that were not Christians, were not Muslims, were forcefully converted to Islam. So it's a very, 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 very sad case that this Boko Haram, if I may just talk about them, you know, they've been terrorizing that part of the country. Well, the whole of the Sahara region, really, in West Africa, this Boko Haram and other terrorist groups, you know, they've been terrorizing people. So their activity didn't just come upon us in 2014 all of a sudden. Nigeria knows about it. I mean, the Nigerian government is trying to fight these insurgencies for many, many years now. But it's one of those ongoing battles that the government is trying, but it has been an uphill struggle. So for us to understand this Boko Haram properly is, I mean, since they started this their foolishness, they have killed over 50,000 people. Can you imagine that? Over 15,000 people has been murdered, and over 2.5 million people displaced from their communities. Many communities sacked, burnt down. It's, I mean, it's terrible, you know. So we know what these people are. These people, they're just vicious, you know. These Boko Haram terrorists, they're just terrible. But there's something sometimes when things happen, you know. Sometimes things happen and it does capture the imagination of people. And the case of these schoolgirls, teenage girls, when this thing happened, they were ages from, like you can see from this photograph, from 14, 15, 16. They were young girls, secondary school girls. They were just taken away. And there was something about the Chibok girls that really captured the imagination of the country. And this was brought to bear when our presidents, our first lady back then, Mrs. Patience Jonathan, on national television, she was trying to console some of the mothers and relatives of the abducted girls, but then she just lost it. She just broke down. Our first lady just cried. Oh my goodness, you know, it captured in her tears that moment. I mean, she should I say she expressed the grief, the sadness, the frustration, the utter hopelessness of the situation that the entire nation was facing, you know. And it was a moment that, oh my goodness, you know. From that I had boss in time, we then had there was this thing that was set up called a campaign, really, bring back our girls. Hashtag bring back our girls. This hashtag bring back our girls picked up momentum as well, and then it just spread all over the world, all over Europe, all over Africa, Europe, Even America, you know, it was, the campaign was on to get these girls, but it was something about these Chibok girls, these innocent girls from whom their innocence, their freedom, their education. Because when these terrorists attacked the school, not only did they take these girls away, or because they've been doing it in other surrounding communities, they burned down the school. So there was panic all over the northern part of the country. Many parents, well, like I say, displaced people. So we have refugees, lots of within Nigeria. Many left their community, didn't go back, and it was so sad. And this #BringBackOurGirls, I guess, was one of those vehicles that was used to keep it in the public attention. As a matter of fact, in America, it got to the first lady as well of the United States. Then we're talking of Michelle Obama, because it was under the presidency of Barack Obama. And Michelle Obama also joined that campaign, #BringBackOurGirls. It gave it that extra push, you know, to keep it alive. So the campaign was ongoing. And the reason I'm talking about the Americans now, I wouldn't normally bring in the Americans because you could say this is a Nigerian problem, but the reason I bring in the American, because of sometimes not everything and what they really seem, you know. There can be lots of underground politics, nastiness that goes on that sometimes the majority of the people are not aware. And who are these behind the scene players that cause it, you know? I will leave you to be the judge of that. But what I'm going to say in this case, when Mrs. Obama took up this thing, bring one our guests, it lifted the hope of the spirits of some people. So we thought, Americans, you're going to help us fight this thing. But I say, why am I talking about the Americans now? Is in April this year, that is correct. April this year, no, February this year, February, yes, it was February. The exact date skipped my mind, but it's February. You can look at it if you want to. A U.S. congressman by the name of Scott Perry, yeah, that's his name, Scott Perry, he was giving a presentation in the United States Congress, a congressional hearing. Here, Scott Perry revealed that for many years, the American government, through the CIA, through the USAID, that is the United States Agency for International Development, they have been funding Boko Haram in Nigeria. Not only Boko Haram, but other terrorist groups not only in West Africa, all over Africa. I mean, you cannot take this. So this is not conspiracy theory. I mean, Scott Perry is a prominent American politician, a member of Congress that should have access to lots of. I mean, this is like coming from the horse's mouth, really. Important documents. So Scott Perry knows what he's talking about. When he let the cat, I don't even know what happened to Scott Perry now, because it's gone quiet since that time now. But this was what he made. He made this publicly. That because this was when the American government were trying to justify pulling out USAID from Africa, and this was one of the reasons they revealed that, because they were spending money on funding terrorists. Now, there's I'll leave you to judge for yourself the truth about all this thing, but there's a phrase lawyers use in legal profession when they say circumstantial evidence. You put all these things together and say, okay, you know, you'll be the judge. Now, there are many ways to look at. And without talking too much, there's a book here I would like to share with you. This book is called White Malice. White Malice is quite a voluminous book actually. Hope you can say White Malice. It's written by Susan Williams. Susan Williams, she's a serious intellectual. She's she's a senior research fellow with the Institute of the Commonwealth Studies and also the University of London. So she knows what she's talking about. She's written a lot about these kind of topics. Why mention her? Now she's I tell you what, I listened to an interview she gave a while ago. She said she wanted to explore the relationship of two African leaders of the past. This Kwame Nkrumah and Patrice Lumumba. They had a very close relationship, and they also shared a same vision, same philosophy on how best to liberate Africa. So she was studying their relationships, you know, and how they died and everything. But she said the more she looked into the archives, the more frustrated she got because everywhere she looks, there were footprints of the CIA. This was what the archives were telling her. The Americans had their fingers everywhere in the business of these Africans. She was at the verge of even giving up. Then she went to her publisher. This is a bit awkward. Anytime I'm trying to do this thing, the Americans keep on turning up. But so well, go ahead, you know. Let's follow your research where it leads you. If the Americans are always popping up, yeah, go ahead. So she dug into the archives, and then that's the back of this book. I recommend this book. And where you see where the Americans were always involved in trying to sabotage the Africans. So when the Americans can say one breath, oh, we're fighting terrorism around the world, they're also funding terrorism. Why? Because they want to get their hands on the resources of the Africans. I really want you to look and make up your own. I mean, the Americans, one must not forget, the Americans, well, we live in a world of what? 8 billion people? Americans only make 5% of the world's population. But even at 5%, America still consumes 25% of the world's resources. So to satisfy this American consumption, they poke their nose everywhere around the world, even in matters of terrorism. I mean, America and the guys are saying they want to police the world. America has military bases scattered everywhere. Everywhere. America has 80 military bases, say because they're protecting the national security. You want to protect America, but the best to protect America is to plant your military bases all over the world. I'm not here to promote China, no, but China is heading to lead the world in all aspects of human endeavors as things. I mean, you know, China does not go about killing people or involving terrorism around the world or planting bases everywhere. America, of the 80 bases around the world, America has 15 military bases in Africa. 15 in Africa. The biggest is in Djibouti. In Djibouti, it's not only the Americans. I mean, Djibouti, they have about 8 foreign military bases in Djibouti. Well, Djibouti is a joke, really. So if anybody from Djibouti tells you they are independent country, you can just laugh at their face. Djibouti, there's nothing independent about Djibouti. I mean, it's laughable that Djibouti won't have an armed forces. 8 military bases in Djibouti alone. So when you see the role America plays in all this, it makes you kind of, sometimes you question their system. I mean, I'm not going to just have it about Americans. It's not only the Americans. I'm sure other countries, the British have they also play their role in interfering with African politics. The French, well, you can't even talk about the French because the French are notorious. To understand the aspect of the French, since the 1960s, we've had 65 military coups in Africa. where governments are toppled, 65. Of these 65 military coups in Africa, many, most of the time there's loss of blood, people die, but of these 65, 22 African heads of states and presidents have been murdered, have been killed. And of these 22, there are cases where of these 16, undisputable, we will find the French engineers, the French involved, complicit in the death of 16 African heads of states. This is in their former French colonies. How many heads of states do you have in Europe? When France alone is complicit in the death of over 16. Isn't it incredible? I mean, for the past few years now, unashamedly, they've been trying to get their hands on Captain Traore of Burkina Faso. Over 20 attempts have been made on his life. So it is things like this that you say, when a man like Scott Perry is talking, you cannot just ignore Scott Perry. Say, no, it's not. It's not. In the case of this Boko Haram, people I say what is the lawyers will call circumstantial evidence. A few years ago, when it was getting too much, the Nigerian government then set up a panel, investigative panel, to look into this Boko Haram menace. And then one of the people involved in this was our Nigerian he was a former foreign affairs minister, foreign secretary, a man of great intellect. He was actually a professor, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. Professor Akinyemi was saying that when they look into this Boko Haram business, sometimes because of the unfight with Nigerian army, sometimes they capture some of all these Boko Haram people. Sometimes many of them coming to see the light in frustration, they actually escape and surrender. When they interview the Professor Bolaji Akiyemi, former foreign secretary, said when they interview some of all these Boko Haram people, they tell them that many a times white men with helicopters fly into the forest to drop arms, sophisticated weapons for them. They find them with foreign currency, they find them with dollar notes in the forest with sophisticated weapons. The Nigerian army is fighting a losing battle because these Boko Haram, many times, their weapons are far more sophisticated than the weapons of the Nigerian army. They say, because when these Boko Haram people, they say, the average Boko Haram member, foot soldier that is an illiterate, never even seen the inside of a classroom. Wouldn't be able to tell you the difference between a pen and a pencil. The average Boko Haram foot soldier, if you give him the world map, he will not be able to point out to you Nigeria on the world map. He will not. Because these people are illiterate. But bigger powers manipulate all these backward people and then, use them to cause all these things. And by so doing, they sack communities. And this always happens where there are resources, rare earth minerals, gold, uranium in all these areas. And then big companies come to mine all these places. This is what the professor found out. These people, village people, illiterate people, I'm not saying they're not saying Americans gave it to us, no, but they're saying they're white people, so definitely it's not Africans, it's not Chinese, it's not Asians. They said white men come with helicopters, give us our weapons. So you cannot dismiss a high-profile man like Scott Perry when he said publicly in February 2025, not that long ago, that the American government, through the USAID, are their backers. And I don't know, it's just so incredible that our people, I really believe that I've always maintained one of the biggest uh, problems we Africans have come to face over the years is we've been sold that illusion of democracy, and then brainwashed by religion. So sometimes we don't think too deeply about these things, because these foot soldiers of Boko Haram, they say to you, oh, they're trying to convert everybody into their faith, which is utter rubbish. What says the Christians? Because Nigeria is even divided. What says the Christians? Thou shalt not kill. Islam even goes further. Islam says if you kill one unjustifiably, it's tantamount to killing the whole of humanity. What could be more clearer? Yet we have all these brainwashed people being misled, saying they kill over 50,000 people killed in Nigeria by just Boko Haram alone. They're killing people, their own fellow men, in the belief. Yeah, they're sincere in their belief. In the sincere belief that they are doing God a favor. I mean, how crazy can you be? They are doing God a favor. That is what these brainwashed people. Now, Scott Perry, U.S. Congressman, has blown the whistle on what some of the reasons behind. That's why I say I highly recommend the works of Susan Williams, White Malice. Susan Williams is a white man, she's a Ripper woman. I mean, so you cannot accuse me of being biased because she's an intellectual, so she knows what she's talking about. She's not alone. We have many people in the Europe and even in America today that are saying, there's Professor Jeffrey Sachs. I will always doff my Professor Sachs. Professor Sachs is one of those few lone European Americans right now. The world is enough for everyone. Why this senseless death and destruction you're exporting around the world in the name of trying to protect yourself? You have military bases everywhere. Africa has just been locked down by the military of America. A while ago, was it last year or a year before, I was listening to this prominent South African politician, Julius Malema. He was speaking in their parliament. He gave a warning. I think their president was there. That America has a military base in South Africa. So God forbid if America and South Africa are to go into a military altercation, God forbid, America will not have to send a single soldier or a bullet from the United States, because from their base in South Africa, they can destroy South Africa from within. What independence has South Africa got there? They can destroy South Africa from within. There are many things for which I can condemn Nigeria, my country, over the years, government and all that. There are many things I can condemn. But one thing I have to say in praise of the Nigerian government is, thank goodness, Nigeria has never accepted the presence of a military base in our country. That alone, just for the self-respect, I doff my hat to our Nigerian leaders. But even saying that Nigerian leaders have not allowed foreign military bases, I cannot even be too happy about that. Because from Nigeria, many people don't know, Nigeria has the biggest American consulate in the world. America's biggest consulate is not in China, with whom they do business, not in Japan, not anywhere in Europe, but in Nigeria. In Nigeria, that's where you have the biggest. How many people are they granting visas to from Nigeria? What business are they doing with Nigeria? The biggest is in Nigeria. The biggest American embassy anywhere in the world is not in Europe. Their biggest trading partner. It's not in China. It's not in Japan. It's doing what in Nigeria? doing what in Nigeria. I only pray that we don't have a problem because you might recall that was a few years ago when the terrorists with whom Americans be having their back and forth with. I say the Americans because they don't have this thing with Japan or with China, with other countries, but with Americans. When the terrorists with whom Americans were having back and forth, Al-Qaeda back then, that was, what year was that? That was 1998 in Tanzania and Kenya, when the US embassies in both countries were attacked by the terrorists. What happened then? 224 nationals of Kenya and Tanzania wiped out. They were murdered. Over 4,000 injured for a fight that had nothing to do with them. So I can only pray that Nigeria never experienced what Tanzania and Kenya experienced when American co-travelers attacked them. I hope it never happens in Nigeria. Because even Nigeria, God forbid, the other day I will say, well, the American president, President Trump, was having what I would call, let's just say one of his episodes. What did he say? He's thinking of unleashing, what was his words? Going to send American soldiers with guns blazing to Nigeria. Can you imagine that? Because just like Malema was saying of South Africa, if America wants to attack Nigeria, not a single soldier or bullet will be sent from America. Because all America needs will be in their military base in Ghana, of all places. It's in Ghana. So Ghana will be the base from which America will attack Nigeria. Ghana, the home of Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first Prime Minister, President, one of Africa's greatest Pan-Africanists, whose is overthrew. There is nothing. She may have been saying it, but she goes into details. America overthrew him. There is not America overthrew him. And he mysteriously died as well from poisoning in, I think it was Vietnam. America's highly complicit in it. So now, if Nigeria is going to be attacked, Nigeria, the giant of Africa, the most populous black country in the world, the attacker is going to come a few miles from where Kwame Nkrumah, W.E.B. Du Bois, these two gentlemen, a few miles from their burial place, from their burial places is from where America will attack another African country. I mean, isn't that, you can't even bear to think about it. You can't even bear to think about it. I mean, this thing about what's happening, it's not only Americans. Like I said, the French, the British, they all are in the act. Why? Just want to pull Africa down. Pull Africa down. When you say people think, oh, you conspiracy theory. No, it is not conspiracy theory. It is a truth. It is a fact. And then they use all this side distraction. We're fighting terrorism. We didn't. No. This is what the Americans are doing. The Americans are doing. The French. I say they use democracy and religion. Democracy is an illusion. So in many parts of Africa, we have all these puppet leaders. We call them democratic leaders, but they are just the what is the word? I'll say that the people that they use, the word skips on my mind, but they're being used to mislead our people. So we think we're practicing democracy. I mean, we have a case like in Cameroon. That's another French former colony, where the president's been there for over 40 years. I saw the other day where American government officially congratulating Paul Biya for his re-election and saying they're looking forward to working with him in years to come to further their cooperation. The man's been in government for over 40 years. Yeah, democracy, yeah. Let's try Latin America and see how that goes. With America, what they call him, Mobutu was the same from Patrice Lumumba's country, the chap that was used to replace Patrice Lumumba, Mobutu. He was a CIA footman, and then he unleashed death and destruction on his own people for years. So with this Chibok guess, it's the same game plan. They use religion, and then people think, oh, it's no, it's not religious. There's deeper politics behind the scene. Just that poor little people like this, ordinary people like this, suffer the brunt of all these big politics. I'm not just having a go at Islam. No, it's not Islam, because this is bigger than religion. Only religion they used to brainwash our people. I mean, it's not only the Muslims, the Christians are just as bad. Although many times the Christians, it's all about prosperity, to hoodwink the people and mislead the people, just for the sake of money. But the Christians sometimes are just as brainwashed, just as overdosed in the opium of religion as the Muslims. I mean, there was today in my country, Nigeria, I know other African countries as well. Talking of Ghana, I was watching television the other day. There was this Ghanaian preacher man talking about how he went to heaven and he saw people driving gold-colored Range Rovers and Rolls Royces in heaven. I mean, Nigeria is the same thing, where we have they call themselves men of God, come and take a podium on how sometimes they always going to heaven and hell on different missions. They go to hell sometimes to tell the devil off. On many occasions, more often they go to heaven and have a sit-down one-to-one chat with God. They sell all this message to their people and just hoodwink the people in the name of religion. Because our people, sometimes we don't think. In Kenya, there is this ridiculous pastor called I call him ridiculous of his name. He went by a ridiculous name of Paul Mackenzie. Well, I say ridiculous because when I say Paul Mackenzie, you think I'm talking of a European. No, this is an African that got the name Paul Mackenzie, got a European name. With 94 of his church officials, this man was able to lead 400 people of his followers into the bush and encourage these 400 people to starve themselves to death. Of the 400 people that died, many were professionals. They had nurses, they had teachers. I think there was a case of, there were about 2 policemen in this group of people that went to commit suicide by starving to death because they wanted to get to heaven. Amongst these people, I think the youngest was a 2-month-old baby. Why? Because our people have been so brainwashed by religion that once you say religion, you are doing something in the name of God, then you can go about and commit havoc and all whatnot. In Uganda, we've got a madman in Uganda by the name of Joseph Kony. Yeah, Joseph Kony. This man with his rattata army, they are ravishing not only this from Uganda, but not only Uganda, South Sudan, the DRC, Central African Republic. Mayhem. What they want to do? They want to their doctrine. They want to take over the country and rule the country using the 10 commandments, amongst which is thou shalt not kill. But this man has killed so many people. So many people. He's still on the loose now. Hopefully one day he'll be caught. You see, when you talk about people that are being brainwashed, it's one of those things that kind of, you think, oh, it is the uneducated, the ignorant, the untraveled, the unlearned. No, 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 no. Sometimes you'll be amazed at how sometimes the most clever people, you think, highly learned men and women can be easily brainwashed. So when you see this program, it is not only the shallow idiots, but sometimes the top people in society are also. I will tell you a story of a man. I wouldn't normally want to mention his name, but I feel free and bold enough to mention his name because what he said is now in the public domain. And the only reason I'm picking this man out is because he's somebody I used to respect. Well, I still respect him a great deal because sometimes even the most clever person, somebody you look up to, can behave stupidly sometimes, you know. So this man, I still respect him. He's a great mind, great intellectual in any other regards. He's a lawyer. Not just a lawyer, he's a professor of law. I mean, he's somebody that probably read far more books than I will ever see in my life. In Nigeria, he became what we call a SAN. A SAN is a senior advocate of Nigeria. That's the highest you go in the legal profession. But the height of this man's achievements, one would say, is he actually became the vice president of my country. Here now I'm talking about Professor Osibanjo. He was vice president to President Muhammadu Buhari for 8 years. Why do I mention this man? Now, I was listening to a lecture this man gave. The professor, by the way, again, like I said, took the podium and was giving this lecture on how Europe was able to industrialize by adopting the scriptures, the Bible, Christian faith. He was quoting chapters and verses in the Bible, how the Puritans did this, the Catholics did that, all over Europe, how with the adoption of Christianity, the Europe was able to industrialize, kick off the industrialization in the 16th century. And then you have people, well, former vice president of the country, you can imagine, you know, VIPs all clapping. Wonderful speech. See, are these people insane? What is this? First of all, Europe did not begin to industrialize until the 17th century. And for any man, same man that should know anything to say this was due to the scriptures, Christian faith, is just crazy. This is a Yoruba man, by the way. Well, the reason I mention his ethnicity now, say it's a Yoruba man, because being a Yoruba man, he hailed from the former great Oyo Empire, one of the greatest empires in Africa, Oyo Empire. His ancestors, this professor's ancestors, many of whom would have left Nigeria through Badagry, captured in Nigeria, put aboard the slave ship to Badagry. Many of his ancestors' bones would still be underneath the Atlantic Ocean because not everybody made the crossing. For those of his ancestors that made the crossing, many would have been worked to death in the fields of America, the Caribbean, or Brazil, in the sugarcane and cotton fields, worked to death. Yet this man takes the podium and says Europe was industrialized. You know, this is the time where Europe, all armies of Europe, descended on Africa. And this man is saying, no, it's not all that. It is industrialization of, they took the Christian faith. They love their neighbor. And that is, you know. By the way, we talked of Nigeria. This man was the vice president of a country where half is Islam, half is Christian. And then you saying this? I mean, the devastation of Africa, from that 15th, 16th, 17th century, gave birth to European industrialization, American industrialization. I mean, if the Church of England, even the Church of England recently apologized because the Church of England had one of the biggest sugarcane plantations in Barbados and other parts of the Caribbean. The Church of England even made an official apology for all the havoc they've done. You needed the sweat, the tears of Africans to kick off this industrialization. I'm talking about Patrice Lumumba, even in Congo. People want to say, what's the other king? Oh, I've forgotten his name now. The Belgian king. Oh, well, but to hell with him anyway, you know. Because I say he was just the arrowhead, it was the Belgians, just for want of rubber. Just for want of rubber. The Belgian, King Leopold, yeah, that's his name, King Leopold, just for want of rubber, just rubber alone. Over 10 million Congolese were murdered. Over 10 million. Nearly double the size that Hitler took out in the Holocaust. Just because of rubber alone, 10 million Congolese were murdered. It has been, let us say now, what Congo took out of Belgium, what Belgium took out of Congo under Leopold and the Belgian people was the equivalent of $10 billion. And for that, over 10 million people were killed. Will my Nigerian professor of law, Osibanjo, go and tell the Congolese that it was the Bible that saved Belgium and not their tears and blood? This has not stopped even. This is even still continues after the slavery era, because since Congo got independence after they took out Patrice Lumumba, successively confusion and internal conflict, over 6 billion people, Congolese, have died, majority of whom are children. And you hear a learned man. This is a man who, for, like I said, for 8 years was only a heartbeat away from the presidency. Thank goodness he was widely rejected by the Nigerian electorate. Everywhere he tried to, because he wanted to become president, but he was soundly rejected on all stages that he could not even go past the nomination stage. If not, he could have been our president today. So this is kind of a man that now saying, no. I mean, it is people like that on the philosophical level that great minds, philosophers like Francis Fanon and Umugunwa Tongo warned us about. We have all these enemies within. Some of them, they are so idiotic in their reasoning, they're not even aware of the harm they are doing. They fall prey to some of all these systems that have been set up to hold Africa back. Nkrumah wrote a great book. What's Nkrumah's book called? Colonialism, the final stage of imperialism, like that. You know, Nkrumah took it from the economic angle. You know, this I saw a book. I don't know here. This is my favorite of this actually. Nkrumah. This is called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. This is by Walter Rodney. Walter Rodney was from Guyana. Yes, Guyana. He wrote this fantastic book. Walter Rodney, he breaks it down. The system's been set up that it is very difficult for Africa to break free from. It's very difficult for Africa to break free from. So he takes it from he breaks it down from the economic angle, how this is done to hold back the African. Why he takes it from the economic angle, breaks it down properly. She does it from the espionage part of it, the military Because what the CIA and others do is quite military when they commit all this havoc and they kill our people, you know. I mean, if I have no access to Osibanjo, he's a VIP, so-called VIP. But if I wish I had access to him, if anyone has access to him, at least this is 2 books I would recommend to him to. I'll just have a Osibanjo, have him locked up in a quiet room in a basement, and make sure he reads this amongst other books and properly digest these 2 books. So you see, this is the problem we are having in Africa today, that sometimes it seems we are fighting a non-ending battle, you know, because we have all these forces pulling us. But who don't know, say, oh, it's not better. There is something far more than terrorism that is going on. It's going on. And then we have our churches, our intellectuals, like our vice president, that try to convince people to look the other way. When the enemy, when I look at things that is going on in Africa, it's just so heartbreaking, really. Heartbreaking. How Africa has been completely caged by Europeans. Sometimes I don't like to blame Europeans too much because, you could say they're being selfish, whatever, but they just they want to do what is best by their people, even though they're going about it the wrong way. For many years now, the narrative has been that Nkrumah was overthrown by the Americans because he was getting too close to the former Soviet Union. He was becoming too socialistic. No, that's not the reason. Do your investigation properly. Nkrumah was overthrown by the Americans because Nkrumah had a vision. He wanted to establish an atomic reactor in his country. He wanted nuclear energy to power his nation, to industrialize people. No. Americans were not going to have it. Because why will an African be allowed to have a nuclear reactor, access to atomic energy? You see the mindset. These are people that are used to, their whole raison d'etre is death and destruction. In their minds, because they use the nuclear energy to create all these bombs and all this confusion around the world, if we give to the Africans, if we allow the Africans to have it, they are likely to become killers like us, mass killers like us. So we're not going to let the Africans have it. 1960s, Nkrumah was planning to have a nuclear reactor in Ghana. For that reason, he was killed. Can you imagine the mindset? That's why Nkrumah was taken out. Nkrumah was taken out. Even when he was taken out, they wouldn't have let him be because of the backing of Secretary of Guinea. That felt that he might come back. So he was poisoned and he died in Vietnam. Americans were complicit in his death. What is Patrice Lumumba's offense? Because like I said, she was right about the 2 men. After what Belgium has done to his country, Patrice Lumumba came on board. I have to do something about this. I must lift my people up. We've suffered too much. For that, again, the Americans in cahoots with Belgium, they had this man murdered, and dissolved his body in acid. Can you imagine the barbarity, the inhumanity of these people? Chopped and dissolved it in acid. Like Malcolm X, Patrice Lumumba left behind little children, little girls. Said so till today, the children, descendants of Patrice Lumumba, haven't got a place to say, this is our father's grave. Because these Europeans came, killed him, not satisfied that he's dead, they dissolved his body, his remains in acid. Don't say it's a long time ago. No, because I insist. If you can collapse time and space, what happened 10,000 years ago And what happened 10 minutes ago occupied the same space in consciousness. So it's the same mindset. Consciousness is all that matters. It has happened before, it can happen again. Like I said, Patrice Lumumba was murdered, was overthrown in the 60s. So was Nkrumah. We are now in a new century, 2025. They're still trying to get their hands on the president of Burkina Faso, Captain Traore. Why? His only offense, wanting to lift his people, take his people out of poverty. Come on, man. Come on. How long will this continue? How long will this continue? Why the need for this kind of barbarity? Again, because I'm having to go at Americans, I have to go back to Jeffrey Sachs. Jeffrey Sachs' argument is the world is enough for everybody. We can all live in harmony and peace. That is Jeffrey Sachs. We have many people in Europe coming to say, oh, let us change. This is not, but still, you always have all this, all this. Anyway, let me not go on too much. But if my professor or former vice president believes Christianity was what industrialized Europe, I will see how that will not play out for the French, because now the Sahel countries are kicking out the French. These are people that they'll take uranium from Mali and all those countries, 100. They'll give the people 100 million, resell it to the rest of Europe for 100 billion to power you. Why the countries waiting are taking are held back in darkness. So let me see now how Christianity will help the French out of that one. I'm sure maybe they will invite our professor to go over to France and give them a lecture on the virtues of the Christian. I am not condemning the Christianity. I believe all religions are great. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, whatever religion you are, you practice, all religions are great. It is only sometimes our people are being misled and they don't follow the religion as they ought to follow it, because the politicians and devious people kind of manipulate them. So it's not an attack on anybody's religion. All religions are fine. It is how some people use it to manipulate others. Anyway, let us leave this aside now. I'll just let me come back to this painting, Chibok girls. I say it's a painting that's very dear to my heart because of the circumstances of the event. I said earlier on, I'm one of those that I see my glass as half full, not half empty. So for me, this picture, even though the tragedy, if it's a kind of a message that we should also acknowledge that some of the things about Africans, the African spirit is not what you can easily crush. See, Africans will have lots of challenges, lots of persecution, tribulations, but still, the Africans' resilience still come out laughing, still come out smiling. So the parents of these girls, they still to say to them, there is still hope. To the girls, there is still hope. Keep your spirits high, and hopefully justice will prevail eventually. And these girls, they won't call them girls anymore, because if the youngest was 15 when they were abducted, but now they're about 26, 27 years old. They're grown up women now, and because they've been forced to marry, so they're now mothers of their own. Just that they still living in that atrocious barbarity of forest life. I mean, you can imagine, living in the forest for all these years. You see, and so long hard currencies keep on coming from America. If we are to believe the U.S. Congressman Scott Perry, they're still there, but goodness knows their living condition. So hopefully an end will come. One day the world will come. We'll see a better world in the future, and On the African side, my African leaders, if sometimes I wonder what we have an African Union. Sometimes you just wonder, gentlemen, what do people discuss there? I mean, people always talk of the Berlin Conference. Yeah, the Berlin Conference, you could fit them. Those at the Berlin Conference, they will sit comfortably in my studio, and there will still be plenty of room. A few European men. What is it that these people did that the entire European Union, 54 heads of states, cannot undo? Cannot undo. You know, they call themselves excellency this, excellency that, and sitting in their parliament for 5 years, completely unaware that the place was well and truly bugged by the Chinese. Anyway, that's a different topic. Eh? So we'll come back to this painting. This is the Chibok, yes, beautiful, colorful painting. I hope it's not for anything that you like the work. It's a work that is dear to me, and I thank you for sharing this time with me. Once again, my name is ARTbyAKPOMIEMIE, and it's been a pleasure having you with me today. Thank you.